Hi Year 6. So today we're going to read part 2 of chapter 8 from the book above pay grade, The Boy with the Bronze Axe by Kathleen Fiddler. So in the last session we read part 1, and you will know that Tenko and Brocken and Callie have gone off in a boat that Tenko has put together from the two boats called a catamaran. So it's joined together with some branches from the tree so that they're able to step across some sheepskin that is across the branches in between one and the other boat. Also, it makes it much more stable. They're just getting to the point now where they're getting tired, and hopefully they found some land where they can stop and perhaps refill their water horns and also have a rest and have something to eat. So as they've come round the headland, they've noticed that there is a bay which is sandy, and that there is some water flowing down between some hills. Okay, if you look underneath the video again, then you'll see the Viper's questions for today, and if you want to pause the video and have a look at those now, and also perhaps look at the vocabulary, you can do that now. Okay, chapter 8, part 2. This is the place where we will rest and eat, Tenko decided. He swung on his paddle and pulled the craft round. The two boats headed between the reefs into the bay. They leaped out when the water grew shallow and pulled the catamaran well up the beach beyond the high tide mark. They flung themselves down on a grassy dune, glad to rest. Tenko was the first to recover. He went down to the boats and brought back 3 water horns and a skin bag of meat. Sit up and eat, he told the children. You'll feel better after food. He handed a mutton bone covered with meat to each of them and took one for himself. They tore at the meat with their strong teeth and drank from the horns. For a while they were too busy eating to talk. We will rest till the shadow of that rock reaches the pool, Tenko decided. Then we will fill our horns at the stream and pull out into the bay again. How's your blistered hand, Brocken? Brocken was a tough young lad. It does not hurt much now. Let me see, Callie demanded. The blister was red and angry looking. She knew that Brocken would suffer in silence and say nothing. We must do something for that, Brocken, or else you will have to give up using your paddle. She seized the soft sheepskin bag in which they had carried the meat. Is the edge of your axe sharp, Tenko? I always keep it sharp, Tenko said, taking out the axe. Hold it with the edge upwards, Tenko. Callie took the bag and, holding the edges of it tightly, she pulled the bag over the sharp edge of the axe till it split. Turning the bag this way and that, she managed to cut a square of soft, supple skin. Give me your hand, Brocken. She fitted the sheepskin around his hand like a fingerless mitten, leaving the thumb free. Then, with the bone needle that she usually carried and a thread of sinew, she sewed the mitten over Brocken's hand and secured it at the wrist by sinews fastening around it. Is that comfortable? She asked Brocken. Yes, much better. Callie looked about her. There was a soft green moss on the rock. Callie knew that this moss had healing properties. She gathered some and went back to Brocken. Tuck this inside your palm and over the blister. It will make a nice soft pad inside the covering. Brocken was comforted and relieved. I should be able to wield the paddle all right now. He did not wish to fail Tenko on this voyage that meant so much to him. So that's our first question today. It's a retrieval question. How does Callie fix Brocken's blister? Have a think. So Callie basically made him a little mitten, a glove. She used the bag that they had brought the meat in and cut it with the axe to make a nice square. She had a needle and some sinew from a sheep that she was able to use as thread. So she put that over his hand like a mitten and left the thumb hole so that he could have his thumb free. That would have meant he had a bit of padding on the blister, but she wasn't complete with that. She also looked around and saw some moss which she knew had healing properties. So she told him to tuck that inside the palm so that there would be a cushion between him and the end of the paddle, but also that the moss's healing properties would help the blister to heal quicker. We will fill the horns again at the stream, and then we will push on further, Tenko directed. They followed the stream inland for a short distance till they came to another stream running into it. Here the water tasted fresh and free from salt. Drink your fill while you are here, Tenko advised. That will save the water in the horns to drink when we are on the sea. When they had refilled the drinking horns, they went back to the catamaran and pulled it down into the water. To the north were towering cliffs. Will you pull north, Tenko? There was an edge of doubt in Callie's voice. I want to see what is beyond that headland, Callie. Perhaps you will come to the islands of which I was told. Callie knew that when Tenko had set his mind to a thing, there was no turning him back. Silently, she took up her paddle and they struck out for the northwest. Tenko guided the craft well out beyond the flurries of white where the waves dashed at the foot of the headland. They looked up at the towering red sandstone ledges above them. They were the nesting places of thousands of screaming seabirds, gulls, guillemots and razorbills. The children watched them plunging and diving into the sea after the fish and then carrying their catch back to the clamouring nestlings. They bent to their paddles again and rounded the headland. The sheer cliffs bent away to the northeast. For an hour they paddled, talking little, saving their energy for their strokes. To the north, the reefs curved in a menacing bow. Did the reefs end in an island? Tenko thought he saw green slopes shining in the sun. Could this be the first of the islands that lie to the north? He cried. A cloud floated between them and the sun. The warm shimmer left the water, and the sea became a menacing grey. Callie shivered. She cast a glance towards Tenko's island. Tenko, I cannot see the island as plainly as you, or as when we first pointed it out, she said in an anxious voice. You will see it when the sun comes from behind the cloud, Tenko said confidently. But when the sun came from behind the cloud, the island was blotted out. It had vanished completely. There is a sea mist rolling down upon us, Callie said with a misgiving in her heart. Already the line of reefs to the north had become hazy. Out to sea, a white mist shrouded the horizon. There was a wet, cold feel in the air. Will you turn back? Callie asked. And that's our next question. It's an inference question. Will you turn back? Callie asked. Why does Callie want them to go back? What is she worried about? Have a think. So I think that Callie is worried that in the sea mist that is coming around them, which is just like a fog, they're not going to be able to see where they're going. And as they are quite close to the rocks and quite close to the reefs, she's worried that they're going to end up stranded on the rocks and the boat will get broken. She's also, I think, perhaps worried that they could equally end up going into deeper sea and not even realising. So she's worried that they're going to get lost or stranded or hurt and that they're not going to get back safely. She'd much prefer that they turned round and went back safely now while they still can. Will you turn back? Callie asked. No. To get round the headland, we should have to pull far out to sea. If this sea fog surrounded us, we might have no notion which way we were going. We might pull further and further out to sea. The water in the horns will not last forever. We do not want to be lost out of sight of land and die of thirst. But you can hardly see the land now, Callie cried in dismay. We might be dashed upon those reefs. We'll take the chance of that, Tenko decided. At least if I cannot see the land, I can hear it. What do you mean? Tenko means he can hear the waves dashing against the reefs if we move closer in, said Brocken. But how will that help us? Callie asked. When the waves beat upon a sandy bay, they sound different from the terrible crashing they make on the rocks. We will nose our way along slowly, listening all the time, till I hear the waves upon the sand. That will mean there is a break in the rocks. We will steer for the break and try to run the boat onto the beach. Tenko sounded so calm that Callie was reassured. They turned the catamaran eastward nearer the land. Though the sea mist closed around them, they could still see a few yards in all directions. Tenko kept a sharp lookout. The fog seemed to press on his eyeballs and dance in 100 flickering points of light. He listened all the time. The children kept taking a few strokes with their paddles and then stopping and listening. The sea was calm, but gradually the crashing, grinding noise of the waves grew loud. "Stop!" Tenko commanded abruptly. Out of the greyness ahead loomed a terrifying reef. Quickly, Tenko twisted the paddle in the water and turned the craft. The reef stretched northward, unbroken, ahead of them. Jagged, toothed rocks revealed themselves. The sweat broke out on Tenko's forehead, but no word of fear escaped his lips. By this time, he had no idea in which direction they were moving. He could only keep the line of the reefs on his right and listen keenly for any change in the sound of the crashing waves. The fog seemed to thicken. The catamaran crept over the sea, yard by yard. Tenko could do nothing but hope he would see any outstanding pinnacles of the reef in time. For a brief moment the mist parted and he could see a few yards ahead. The reef pointed a jagged finger to the north, but there seemed to be nothing beyond it. They paddled on. It seemed as if they were reaching the open sea. "Stop!" Tenko called. They rested their paddles and listened. "The sea sounds further away on my right. Does it sound like that to you, Brocken?" "Yes, Tenko. I think I can hear a dragging sound of shingle and sand too." Brocken's ears were sharp. That's our next question today. It's a vocab question. Brocken's ears were sharp. What does this mean? Have a think. So, Brocken's ears were sharp is a term that we use. If we say something is keen or it's sharp, it means that it is good at something. And in this case, when we talk about keen hearing or sharp hearing, we're not talking that his ears were actually pointy like an elf or they're sharp like a knife. We're meaning that his hearing is really very good, so he can hear things that perhaps other people might not be able to hear. "Yes, Tenko, I think I can hear a dragging sound of shingle and sand too." Brocken's ears were sharp. "Let us pull towards it," Tenko said, altering the course of the catamaran. "Keep a sharp lookout for the rocks." They dipped their paddles again. The craft moved steadily through the water for about half a mile, but still they saw neither reefs nor land. The sound of the waves beating on a beach grew louder. "The water is getting shallower," Tenko declared. He could tell by the drag of his paddle in it. "The mist is thinning at last," Callie exclaimed. They paused for another few strokes and then Tenko cried, "Steady the craft!" They thrust out their paddles and steadied it. Tenko pushed his paddle blade towards and downwards in the water. "I touched sand," he cried. "It was soft sand and not hard rock at the bottom." His voice cracked on a note of relief. "Let us paddle very gently and see if it becomes shallower still." There was no doubt about it. The shore was shelving rapidly. Tenko peered over the side of his boat. There is only enough water to reach just above our knees. I'll get out and push the craft. You stay where you are, in case it is only a sandy shoal. Tenko pushed the boats ahead of him. Another couple of minutes and the catamaran grounded. The waves were curling lazily over a sandy beach. "Haul up the boats!" Tenko cried. Callie and Brocken sprang out. Freedom and fear lent strength to their arms, and they hauled the catamaran over the wet sand to a slope of dry sand above the tide level. They had reached a bay with another small river running into it. They followed the stream inland for a short distance, but there were no signs of either people or herds. They turned back one more time to the shore. "Let us get the meat and the drinking horns out of the boats. I am hungry," Tenko declared. By the time they had eaten, the light began to fail. "Soon it will be dark," Tenko said. "We shall have to stay here for the night. There's a soft sandy hollow where we can sleep, and this bank will give us shelter from the wind." The children curled up in the hollow and pulled their sheepskin cloaks over them. Soon they were asleep from utter exhaustion. So that's the end of chapter 8. Hopefully in chapter 9 we'll find out a little bit more about where they've landed. I wonder if there are any people there or if they've discovered a new place. We'll find out next time. Bye.